So here we are, the end of the journey. Lucifer is finally over as a whole. There's no more Save Lucifer. It's done. That is it. Did you like it? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Lucifer because this is a channel where I talk about everything in TV series. So don't forget to don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe there on your screen at the bottom here. So somewhere right there. I started watching Lucifer, I want to say about a couple of years ago. It was when it made the move to Netflix. I quickly became a fan of the show. Not only because it was well written, the first season, it had good acting. The cast was really good together. And I kind of felt like when I was watching Lucifer, the character, I was kind of almost watching myself in a way. And no, I don't own a nightclub. And no, I have not had sex with thousands of women and men. The way that he kind of jokes around certain things and he makes these corny little jokes, that's kind of how I act in real life. Outside of this whole YouTube thing, and sometimes here on YouTube as well. But hanging out around friends and my girlfriend, it's just I act like that. So I very, very quickly was drawn to Lucifer because of that reason. And then as the show progressed, I liked the other characters. I ended up, liking the whole entire cast. If you saw Lucifer in season 1, for example, and then you turn on TV on Netflix and you start from season 6, you're gonna be very lost. Just don't do that to yourself. And speaking of lost, there was a few things in the final season that left me with more questions than I had answers by the end of it all. Which doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. It's just, spoiler alert, by the way, I'm about to talk about the entire season 6, all of it. So there will be spoilers. So you have been warned. Season 6 obviously picked up where season 5 left off. That's a stupid comment. It obviously picked up there. But we know that by the end of season 5, Lucifer becomes God. Dan passes away. All these other things are starting to happen. And in season 6, even though there's only 10 episodes, it felt like towards the end, things were kind of rushed a little bit to get to the end game, which we will talk about here soon. I just felt like there were some things that they did that I think I have a better explanation. So in the first episode of the final season, we come across this murder. This is still a detective show, by the way, even though it's season 6. And they have to solve. So this is Lucifer's way of doing things with Chloe before they have to take off to the Silver City. So he decides to take Chloe to do some of his favorite things. One of them was a magic show. When he gets there, the magic show goes terribly wrong. And he ends up finding out, some of the secrets of the show, blah, 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 yada, yada. So on the back burner, that's going on. But also, if you remember from a previous season, a cop named Corbett, he tries to frame a Amenadiel and a younger African-American kid, and they knew about it. They tried to make a report about him, blah, blah, blah. Turns out that he's now a detective. So he's basically would have been Dan's boss. But now he is Amenadiel's boss because Amenadiel is now part of the police force. He works for the LAPD just like Chloe did and Dan did and Ella and everybody else. So then in this episode, there's also the fact that Ella is starting to lose her faith in God. She's praise, but it doesn't feel like anybody's listening. Gee, I wonder why. But Chloe gains super strength from Amenadiel's necklace. She becomes sort of really a partner in the best sense of the word to Lucifer, as far as being head to head on strength and just being invulnerable. Chloe has that right now in the beginning of the season. And then there's also Dan. Dan is stuck in hell. He's trying to break out of his hell loop, but he can't. And he's been down there for thousands of years, according to the show. He still figured out what his guilt is. And then we see Lucifer visiting Dan in hell and telling him all that stuff, only making Dan more mad and more upset at him. So then by the end of that episode, we see a woman sitting on hell's throne. So then or if you're anything like me, you're like, who the hell is that? So then in episode 2, some of the things from episode 1 carry over. Now Ella has a little fling that she's trying to investigate due to being traumatized by the evil Pete, not me. So then Lucifer tries to help her out, doing a little bit more investigating on her crush. Meanwhile, the woman that was in hell starts making a deal with Dan, saying that, she needs help killing Lucifer, and still we don't know who that person is. This episode continues on building the long game here, the end game here, by having a frog just come out of nowhere and land on the top of Ella's car. So this is building on and fueling Ella's lack of faith even more, because she's praying. It feels like God isn't listening, and all of a sudden frogs are falling out of the sky. And Ella has done some major digging here. Her detective work was spot on, and we'll get to that in a second. The next episode, we see Dan and the mysterious woman fly out of hell. When she does that, basically Dan becomes a ghost. He is now stuck on Earth. The only way for him to leave Earth is to find his redemption and get rid of his guilt. She takes him to Lucifer's penthouse. When they get there, he tries to warn Lucifer that she's there to kill him, but Lucifer isn't there. And then there's this conversation between them two, which continues on later in the episode when Lucifer gets back to the penthouse, sees Dan, sees the woman. The woman tries to pin him down, and it is revealed that this mysterious woman is actually Lucifer's daughter. This was actually a really cool episode. I don't remember any other episode in the series being animated. So for most of the episode, I want to say maybe half is fair. About half of the episode was animated, like cartoon style. It was very cool. It was somebody's loop, hell loop. That Lucifer was in there trying to help that person out because he felt like he needed to do some good to be able to feel worthy of becoming God. So then the next episode ends up being all about Lucifer's daughter. Obviously, Lucifer doesn't believe her. How could he have a daughter in her mid to late 20s? What it looked like she is in mid 20s when, he doesn't remember. I mean, he has slept with a lot of people, but he just didn't recognize her and says, yeah, I just don't recognize you. But there's something there when they take a look at each other. But then, Lucifer doesn't believe her, doesn't trust her. So then him and Chloe get to investigate a little bit more. And Lucifer tracks down all of the women that he had sex with in 1999. And then he tracks down the women that had daughters. And then he goes and he talks to them, and he finds there's some drama on the way about, detective cop stuff. He's like, they got to keep that going. But then later on, they find out that none of the girls that Lucifer found, none of the women that had daughters, none of those was his daughter. So he's like, okay, well, she's not my daughter then. She's full of crap. Is she? So when Lucifer goes back to the penthouse, he's talking to Dan. He tells her that he feels like she might be his daughter. And then the scene pans out to Chloe's home, in which she is there, the woman. And Chloe's also there, and upon seeing Chloe, she says mom, and she hugs her, and that's the end of the episode. Woo! It's getting good at this point. So then episode 5, we get a little bit more of a background story as to why this person is saying that she's Lucifer's daughter. Well, it turns out that her name is Aurora. In the TV show, it's short for Rory, short for Aurora, and she goes by Rory. Decker reveals that that is the name of the girl. If she would have had a second daughter, she would have named her Aurora. Now, her and Lucifer are trying to make sense of all this, and Rory tells them that she traveled through time to find out why Lucifer abandons them, which to Lucifer, that is absolutely ridiculous, ludicrous. He would never do that to his daughter because he's been through abandonment before, so he knows better. He's not going to do that. Another reason for him to distrust her. Rory opens up and ends up telling Lucifer that she's so mad at him that even on Chloe's deathbed, he did not show up. Again, she's from the future, so she's lived all those moments. And she was there for Decker's death. And he said that even in her death, he abandoned her. So it creates this plot for the next episodes until the end, trying to figure out why does Lucifer abandon his daughter and Chloe. Apparently, it happens a lot sooner than you would imagine, at least that I imagine. While all this is happening, there's different things happening in the background. So for the next 2 episodes, this is basically what is happening here. Maze and Eve are planning their wedding. Adam, yes, first man Adam is back in the picture. He tries to get Eve to leave Maze, and he's kind of a douche, and he's basically a typical toxic male. Amenadiel is fully part of the LAPD police force. He goes on missions and this and that. But while this is all happening, Ella has a huge mural that she's basically figured out all by herself that Lucifer is a devil, Amenadiel is an angel. I mean, she figures everything out. So in episode 7, which is Maze's wedding, all of that kind of comes to fruition. Everything kind of comes to the surface. Ella had a few too many drinks by that point, and she just kind of let everything out at the wedding. During the episode, there's a few rough, bumpy moments between Lucifer and his daughter. And then at the end of the episode of Maze's wedding, Ella drinks a little bit too much. She ends up spilling the beans in front of the whole entire audience, which is basically just everybody that they knew, plus some extras that were supposed to be part of Maze's family, a bunch of zombies or demons. And basically she lets everyone know that she knows everything. So after Ella explains to everybody that she knows everything, she also kind of drops the bomb that she thinks that the world is ending, because based on her research, all these things are happening around the world that is leading her to believe that the world's ending, which leads Amenadiel to believe that that is happening because God isn't there and Lucifer needs to take the throne ASAP. And this is the episode where Lucifer finally proves to his daughter that he would never do that unless he was forced to do that. And by that, I mean abandoning them. He becomes vulnerable around her. He allows her to hurt him with a gun. She shoots him in the leg. And all this is to show her that, to prove to her that he really loves her and that he really didn't abandon her. And then by episode 8, which is the one that I was just talking about, Lucifer finally decides and he finally realizes that he's ready to become God. And then he also realizes that's not his calling. So everything that happened in season 5, the battles, the murders, all of it was just basically for nothing. So that's my first gripe with the season. If I was a Man of Steel, I would have been pissed if Lucifer told me that after everything, the war that they fought for him against Michael, he all of a sudden doesn't want to become God anymore. I mean, I would have been pretty pissed. So then here comes the last 2 episodes. Now, episode 9, titled Goodbye Lucifer, is about Lucifer's last day on Earth. He goes around and he is making amends and talking to all his friends and treating them, I guess, accordingly and how he always should have treated them. Having some really nice touchy moments and some moments in which made my girlfriend cry several times while watching. That just really shows how far Lucifer has come as a character. So on that day, they find out that Decker is pregnant. That day is also the day that Lucifer vanishes. Now, Lucifer has set up some ways for him to not leave and not vanish that day, which is August 4th in the show, which it doesn't happen by the end of the show. It's August 5th and Lucifer's still there. But then he gets a phone call. As the episode progressed, we see that Dan visited the men that killed him in jail, just trying to figure out what his guilt is. So he thinks that his guilt lies with Vincent. Because of the lack of answered prayers by God, the angels decide to start answering some of those prayers, and because they're very inexperienced with it, they end up granting some wishes that they should have not granted. And what happens? Vincent escapes from prison while Dan is following him. But then Dan basically possesses Vincent. He tries to stop Vincent from potentially killing this store clerk, and he just possessed his body. He then has a talk with Lucifer about everything that's been happening. Obviously, Lucifer almost killed him because he saw Vincent. But then, after proving that he was Dan, Lucifer told Dan some things, and Dan told Lucifer some things, and Lucifer told Dan that it's not about what you do with your time that you have left, it's about who you spend it with. So that gave Dan the idea to go talk to Trixie. Upon talking to Trixie, Dan realizes that his guilt lies with him not being a good role model for Trixie. And he never really realized that before. Dan was talking bad about himself. Again, this is Vincent talking to Trixie. She doesn't know who he is. And, Dan was talking badly about himself. And Trixie stood up for him as if the stranger was saying mean things about her dad. And she tells him that she was very proud of Dan and very proud of the man that he was an amazing dad, an awesome dad. And from that point on, Dan realized that Trixie was proud of him, which allowed him to break his hell loop and finally ascend into heaven. Well, remember how I said the day was over and it was the 5th and nothing had happened? Well, as soon as they get out of the little panic room that Lucifer had built, the phone rings and it's Vincent. He has his daughter captive. So then the season finale is all about Lucifer and Chloe trying to save their daughter from Vincent. This is Lucifer, so he gets what he wants. So he ends up being able to get to the point where he saves his daughter, but she almost kills Vincent, in which she was creating a demon face for herself. But then Lucifer saved her, and that's when Rory realized that is his true calling. That's what leads Lucifer to abandon them. Later on in the episode, Chloe, Lucifer, and Rory all talking amongst each other, and Lucifer says that he finally found his role, because if the devil can redeem himself, if the devil can change, so can other bad guys. Once that is realized, Rory her body starts to go back to her timeline as if she had accomplished, she breaked out of her own hell loop. She ends up going back to the future and Chloe and Lucifer, they know what needs to be done. Now, here's what I have an issue with. Lucifer, as his daughter was leaving his timeline, he said, I can go back down to hell. I can help some people. I can come back up. I can be present for your life and still do my calling. And that is perfectly fine. That would have been fine right there. Because guess what? That is exactly what Amenadiel is doing, because Amenadiel becomes God. Now, Lucifer's daughter says, please don't change anything. Do as if you always did, as if this is inevitable, that I'm never gonna know why you keep leaving, even though now she understands. Because she is afraid that if things don't go the way that they went, she won't become the person that she's become. Lucifer won't become the person that he becomes, and Chloe doesn't become the person that she becomes, in which they all do right by each other at the end. But it is true, Lucifer ends up leaving before his daughter's even born, and he goes down to hell to become not hell's ruler, but hell's healer. He basically stays there all the way up until Chloe's deathbed, until Chloe dies. Now we see that later on, there's a flash forward when Chloe's on her deathbed and their daughter is there. Rory had mentioned that this was basically an unbreakable loop, that you can change it, you can break it. Well, at the end, when she's talking to her mom on her deathbed, her mom finally tells her the whole story before she dies, which didn't happen at the time that she went back to confront Lucifer. She went back in time. So I think that moment right there broke her hell loop as well. It broke the unbreakable time loop that they found themselves in, because before her mom's death, she finally understood why her father left. Her father left because of her request. And I think that kind of made things a little bit easier for Rory when Chloe died. And then obviously Chloe dies, she goes to heaven, meets Amenadiel up there, and Amenadiel says, are you ready to go home? And what is her home? Decker's home is always going to be Lucifer. So Lucifer basically becomes a counselor, just like Dr. Linda Martin was his counselor. He becomes a counselor for bad guys in hell. And we see some older villains sitting in this couch. At the end, somebody knocks on the door. He thinks that is the food that he ordered, but it turns out it's Chloe. And once he sees her, he finally realizes as well that loop is also broken. So they didn't get the happy ending because Lucifer eventually missed everything. The birthdays, parties, experiences, blah, 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 yada, yada. He wasn't there for Chloe, wasn't there for his daughter, missed Chloe's death, but at the end, they still get to be together because the time loop was broken and they finally can be eternally together, because now Chloe is going to become Lucifer's basically assistant down there in hell. So Decker goes to hell to help Lucifer to be with him, because he sacrificed his time, which again is a millennia in hell, to make sure that their daughter got her wish, that at the end she was going to be the same person that she was when she finally made amends with her father. And she was at the end. But I don't see how they just couldn't do the whole thing where Lucifer goes up and down. He still gets to be there with his daughter. He still gets to raise her. It would be... It's not always better, right, to have both parents there, because some people are just not meant to be parents. But it was obvious that Lucifer cared and loved his daughter. It was obvious. So he was going to be there for her, just like Amenadiel was there for Charlie on his birthdays. And we get to see Charlie develop wings, so he does become some sort of celestial being, half angel, half human. So I didn't like that. I felt like it would have been just fine if Lucifer does what he's meant to do, but he's also there for his daughter's entire life, and he's there for Decker when she dies. But I didn't write the show. This ending was okay. I'm usually not a fan of happy endings. I've never really been a fan of happy endings. So I am glad that we didn't really get a happy ending, but we eventually got the happy ending for Lucifer and Decker. This is totally bittersweet. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I loved Lucifer. I loved the writing. I loved the jokes. I loved the characters. It's always hard to judge a series. We're not talking about a season finale. We're talking about a series finale. It is done. It is over. This is the end. Unless they decide to pull back later, which I just don't see it coming. The Adventures of Decker and Lucifer in Hell. I don't know. It just sounds like a repeat of the show. So, yeah, this is it, guys. Lucifer is done. It's over. There's no more. So, as a season 6, which was a good season, but I don't think it was the best season of Lucifer. I think it's very far from that. I think the last season is probably like a 7 out of 10, but I would have to give Lucifer as a whole, all the seasons included, mashed into one and presented to you in a bowl, I would have to give Lucifer, again, this is my rating and I'm kind of biased. So I am giving Lucifer an 8 out of 10 overall. I think it was a good show, and I'm also going to put up there the fire seal of approval, because this show is fire. The show's great. It's a great show to watch with friends or with a loved one or even by yourself. If you got nothing else to watch and you want to watch a show, that's kind of like a dirty version of a CSI, or, a dirty version of any detective show that you've seen before, you're going to like Lucifer. There's lots of sex jokes, sexual innuendos, drug jokes, drug innuendos. I mean, all sorts of stuff, but it's a fun watch. Lucifer is a fun watch. It's a fun show. I'm sad that it's over, because, you watch some of these shows, you get attached to these characters, and I liked the actors here. Every single one of these actors did a fantastic job. Again, I just wish they would have done the last episode a little bit better, up to my liking, right? In no way, shape, or form when I say ghosts. Nobody there knows me. Nobody there is even going to be watching this video. But if you are, and if you were the actors, if you were one of the actors, if you were one of the showrunners or writers or producers or whatever, kudos to you. I have no idea how hard it is to write a TV show, and not only to write one, but to write a successful one that rallied fans behind it, that saved it for 3 more seasons, or 2 more seasons, 3 more seasons, I believe. That is hard to do, and you guys did it. So props to you guys. My hat's off to you. I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing next. If you are one of the writers, one of the actors, because literally everybody there was great. I follow majority of you on Twitter, and I see what you post, and you really care about your fan base, which is, to me, just great overall. It deserves the support, and it deserved the support that you guys needed and that you guys eventually got. Down below, there'll be 2 videos of my latest video, which is the Wheel of Time trailer reaction, which is doing so well from my channel right now. So if you're watching this, thank you very much. And a playlist that I want you guys to check out. Feels bittersweet because Lucifer was the first thing I reviewed on this channel, and I told you why you should watch Lucifer. And this is the end. So this is not the end, obviously, of the channel, but this is the end of Lucifer here for us. Catch you next time.